Really, what I want to do is share with my listeners and everybody. I mean, what a career! Holy shit! Like, we'll get into all types of stuff, but on the most simple level, how are you feeling?
I'm actually feeling really good.
Okay.
It took me a while to even admit that, but
Yeah.
people, when I've told people, I'm retiring, it was, well, they didn't know whether to congratulate me or offer condolences, and
Yeah.
I can understand why there's that hesitation, but upon sort of reflecting on it, I think from my side, it's definitely more on the, not that I'm congratulating myself, but I'm just more proud of what I've been able to achieve. I mean, it's been literally 30 years of playing, and there's, you get so engrossed in it. It's just thinking tennis, all the time, and to sort of step away, you kind of see that there's there is life outside, outside of tennis. So
Yeah.
and I think the fact that, if I say to you, oh man, I'm missing it like anything, I feel like, well, maybe kind of regret or made the wrong decision. But
Yeah.
it's only been 6 weeks, but so far I feel like, I made the right decision. So I mean, I have to be happy with that.
That's great. I think fans of the sport, we see a guy who won Newport last year. We see a guy who two Grand Slam finals, top 10, top 5 in the world, and it didn't, in our perspective, I'm putting me in that fandom. We hadn't seen we hadn't seen you a little while, and all of a sudden it was like, I'm retiring, so it's a feeling of almost a little bit of sadness. But what
Yeah.
we don't understand is the day to day to day to get to the level where you are. So, what the hell have you been doing now that you're done? You're not training?
Yeah. Well, actually, just if I could just go back to what
Yeah.
what you first said there, because I think that's an interesting point. I finished 2018 was my best year. Made top five, and then
Yeah.
2019 was just challenging for me. I ended up having knee surgery. I
Yeah.
had this really bad elbow. That cost me almost half the year.
Yeah.
And going into 2020, another knee surgery. So the last few years, it's been really challenging from that
Yeah.
front, but it's the amount of effort and time that I've put in has been, exactly the same.
Right.
Whether it's more time on the treatment table or gym or flying to South Africa to see people. I mean, flying
Right.
to doctors in Kentucky. There was a really lot that goes on behind it. So, from the outside, it's been tough in terms of the results, and
Yeah.
people be like, well, maybe that's tough that he didn't try and keep going at least to sort of get back to where he was ranked. But I mean, I did everything that I
Yeah.
could, and just by the end, I think it was almost just a little bit, not too much. It just was enough.
Yeah.
So that's why I think some of the thoughts leading into it. But it's just funny. I was just texting my mom this morning. I'm like, it honestly feels like I'm busier now than I was when I,
Yeah.
which seems crazy. I don't know what's going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
I need more hours in the day. I'm probably filling it up. I mean, being pretty busy historically, and in terms of that. But um, yeah, I don't know if how long this how long this will last. But really, the last 6 weeks has just been filled up with things I really enjoy doing. It's been great spending more time with my family.
Yeah.
Like most tennis players, I've picked up golf. I
Yeah.
pedal a
Oh, great.
little bit more frequently. And then there's a few projects. There's a charity first serve, which like
Yeah.
you've helped us with that. My wife and I, we're now on the board there, so doing a little bit more work there.
Great.
And just really taking my time to kind of see what the next chapter is. But I don't feel like I'm at home twiddling my thumbs.
Right. It's so unfair sport because if someone would have asked me when you were in college at Illinois if Kevin Anderson was going to have a $17 million two Grand Slam final career, I would go, you're out of your mind. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. Uh, and so now that you've done that, we go, oh, why is he retiring? Come on, you should be so high, and it's just so unfair. It's like you've achieved so much, but I have to admit, when the news came in, it was a little surprising and it was a little sad. But then I slapped myself in the face and I said, we got to talk to him and congratulate him on this career and what so many accomplishments. did you have to plan to make Grand Slam finals when you were a kid or when you're playing in college, but did you do what you wanted to? Did you have the results you wanted to, or is it just about maxing out your potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so hard to answer because your expectations and your perspective just shifts as you go along. The more I've reflected, especially in these last few weeks, I really realized that one of my biggest goals was just to try and challenge myself as much as possible throughout the whole process.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel like I did that since I was, a really young kid. And I remember my dad, he used to tell us, my brother and myself that, there's no guarantees in tennis or in sport, but I mean, in our example, tennis. But the one thing you can control is like your amount of effort and dedication
Yeah.
you put towards it. And if that means you get to 75 in the world or 200 in the world, I mean, that's just what it was meant to be. I had higher aspirations. I mean, as a kid, I
Of
wanted to
course.
win Grand Slams, and I think coming from South Africa, just being a little bit isolated, if you had said I'd be top 100, I probably would have taken that. I will say, like, I feel like one of the challenges I faced, I think, was I was always pretty intimidated. I felt pretty sheltered in South Africa in terms of exposure to other, top professionals around the world. That's where college, I think, was really great for me.
Ah, good.
Me to settle down a little bit. But I mean, I definitely feel like my ability was not. I always felt like I had more ability than what I was able to achieve as a junior and in the first parts of my career. But it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of effort. I was actually just talking with the ATP. I'm the oldest person to have ever reached top 5 for the first time, which is like
It's wild because I don't.
I would like.
It's wild. Go ahead, please.
I'd
Sorry.
like to be. No, I'd like to reach top 5 earlier, but in some ways, it really sums up what my dedication, patience,
Yeah.
perseverance has been, just to constantly keep striving.
I think that's. I think that is that's a preferred stat. I mean, that to me shows in comedy, they say the longer it takes you to reach the top is as long as it takes you to reach the bottom. So you don't want to shoot up to the top. I hate to bring up Boris Becker right now, but I mean, 17-year-old Wimbledon champion, millionaire, and so it just shows dedication and focus that I also was reading what the ATP said about you, and it was funny how they're like the oldest. I'm like he was 32 or whatever. Come on, it's not like. You mentioned, Wimbledon. You mentioned 2018. You played 2 Grand Slam finals against 2 of the greatest tennis players that have ever walked on earth. Is that how you want it? Or do you wish you'd really played like, Cedric Pioline in the final or something?
I mean, I think at that stage, it's
Well, I'll interject just so my listeners remember, 2018 Wimbledon final against Djokovic, straight set loss after beating Fed in the quarters, 2 sets down, beating John Isner in the second longest match of all time in the semi. And then 2017 final against Rafael Nadal, a final that I was at. Thank you, Kevin Anderson. But yeah, okay, please. So would you want to play the 2 greatest players in the final or no?
I mean, look, I think it would have always been a tough match. Whoever you're playing in the finals
Right.
of a Grand Slam,
Right.
yes, it was more difficult playing 2 guys who had both times, me walking the court, they'd been in this position over 20 times before.
Unreal.
I think looking back to 2017, if you looked at the tennis we played throughout the summer, just on paper, I actually think I had a much better chance of beating Rafa than I gave myself credit for. And I think that was a lot to do with just the moment. I think not that I regret it because it was such a great moment for me, but after my semifinals match, I was so happy. And like, I remember I went up into like the box to family, my brother, which is, yeah, I mean, as things go, that's typically what you do only when you win a Grand Slam, which
Right.
on a separate conversation is is kind of crazy because I mean, there's so many milestones you achieved along the way. But I don't know if like in hindsight, that was my way of like achieving what I'd set out that week. I mean, look, my draw had opened. I felt like I had a really good chance of going through. I still had some really tough matches, but
Yeah.
in going to the finals, I can't say I had that same I'm going to get this done attitude that I'm sure Rafa had going into the same finals. And I think during Wimbledon, one of the lessons I learned from that was throughout each match, I always had my sights set onto the next target. Which I mean, I enjoyed it was a great 2 weeks, but I kind of learned that lesson from US Open of like, no, I'm here to go all the way. And yeah, I mean, in the finals was just really challenging to play Novak, given just playing him and all the time that I'd spent on court beforehand. But I guess a long way to answer your question was I think playing Rafa and Novak in those matches. I mean, I'll always remember. Had I played somebody else and won the tournament, I mean, yes, I mean that
Sure.
would be amazing, and there would be, to be a Grand Slam champion. But it's been quite remarkable playing with these guys,
Yeah.
throughout my whole career.
You mentioned 2017 U.S. Open. That was a lesson learned. I mean, when you wrap up a tournament, how are you determining those lessons? Are you having a discussion with your coach and actually saying, this is what we learned this week? Is that 6 weeks of retirement thinking about it? But I mean, how tangible are those lessons?
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been very process orientated. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if anything, my coaches would tell you I'm a little bit too much like that. Very much of like, okay, what are we doing well? And especially, unfortunately, and what are we not doing well?
Right.
I think, I was very critical of that process.
Yeah.
And with tennis, it's tough. You play 24 tournaments a year or so. I mean, if you win, I've won, multiple titles in a season one time. So that means, throughout my career, you're losing basically every week. So it's like,
Right.
as you know, it's so tough to walk away. You make the finals of a tournament and you lose in the finals, and you've had no time to like actually really appreciate the
Right.
the matches gone through. That's why I actually like Grand Slams, because you had that day in between. And you're like,
Right.
just enjoy the win, especially that day.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just Mike. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. My dog started barking.
Oh, that's okay. Well, let's talk about your dog. You're a successful athlete. You're a smart guy. I know you and your family. You're a wonderful family man. But you still have this wonderful passion for your little tiny dog. And people always are weirded out that I love my dog so much because I seem like such a normal, balanced person. But what is the relationship of a high intensity pressure athlete and a little dog? And for you, what does the relationship mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a dog lover, and I always wanted a bigger dog. And my wife, she had a Chihuahua growing up, so
Right.
we ended up getting a Chiweenie, which is maybe a couple pounds bigger than a Chihuahua. But we got her after another really tough year in my career. 2016, I'd been injured almost the whole year, and we got the beginning of 2017, and she traveled the world. And I mean, I've had my best results since 2017, so I feel like
there you go.
She's really been part of the process. But it's a weird dynamic. I mean, I sometimes feel self-conscious walking down the street. I am 6'8", and she is only like 8 pounds, but it's it's just I'm sure and all the dog lovers out there, it's really somebody that you connect with. And I think being able to travel with her I mean, literally, other than Australia and China, that's the only places that she hasn't been for for good reasons. And it's
does she, first of all, you should follow her on Instagram. It's Lady K Anderson. You should also follow Kevin on Instagram. But I mean, does it provide, like, am I overthinking it? Does it provide an unconditional support that it is so
and
important?
Not like sounding cliched or something. I mean, it really does. Like, coming from a tennis match, like, it's just sort of almost like a grounding. Like, she doesn't care win or lose. And I think for me, that was actually really good at the time. I mean, I think it helped me through just being a little bit more well-rounded in a way. And it could have had a different effect. I mean, I really don't know, but just the fact that she was able to travel, come to matches, like, it was just always a huge positive. I mean, we certainly didn't get her as a team discussion being like, how can we improve my tennis career? I need to adopt a dog. That
right.
wasn't that wasn't the goal, but it certainly ended up being. I think she was a huge addition to my coaching staff.
If that was the goal, it wouldn't have worked because it was truly out of love and support. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
You're playing some golf now. Your wife, Kelsey, collegiate golfer. Is this what she's been waiting for finally to play you in golf? Or is it like, oh shit, now Kevin has to join me? I was enjoying golf without him.
Yeah. So what's funny about that is for the longest time, she would be like, Kev, you really need to just, we need to find more hobbies that I'm interested in. And like, golf
Right.
is one of them. And, just with my tennis career, obviously it's, a lot of it was, around what I needed to do. So I'll be the first to admit that the priority in that stuff was me. And that's why my wife's been amazing and supporting that. But now since my tennis is done, it's a different mindset. But I've really embraced her willingness for me to pick up one of her hobbies, because now I'm playing golf like 5-6 days a week, and
Right.
I feel like that's what she wished for. But look, the first goal is I still haven't beaten her yet. That's definitely
Right.
a goal somewhere along the line. I feel like it's going to happen, but maybe that's just the self-confidence coming through. But
Yeah.
no, it's been great. Golf's been a huge part of her, of her life. Her dad's a golfer. It's just a great way to get out there and connect. So it's something that I've really enjoyed doing.
I'm sure she's going to love, if she isn't listening now, love knowing that you just said, I think I can beat her. And I don't know. I'm not sure you can, but even if you can, I might hold off on that. Let's talk about something that isn't super attractive to talk about, but let's talk about money for a second.
Yeah.
$17 million career prize money. When you start out on the tour and you start to get some money, how do you not blow it? I mean, what's the, like, are there systems in place that help players manage the money? How does that work? Because this, let's hope you make more and more and more money your whole life. But from a tennis perspective, these are your money earning years.
That's a great question. Obviously, we hear stories all the time about athletes really having financial difficulties. I mean, I think for me it was gradual. I didn't sign a $10 million Nike contract when I was still a teenager. I mean, that helped. I think most importantly, just the way I was brought up, family values. I think it's not in my sort of nature to go and spend a whole bunch of money. So I think it helped me being more responsible in terms of the of the long run. I think it's really important. We never really have lessons or education of like how to deal with not just nearly fame, and by no means that I was nearly as famous as some of these other guys, but even still, like as a successful athlete, you're probably going to be more successful in your early years.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily responsible to understand how to deal with that. It helps having a wife who has a degree in finance and accountancy, so that
helps.
Kind of reins in. So books are always in order.
Yeah.
But my dad as well. Like also, I remember one of the first years on the tour. Like he gave me systems of keeping track of expenses, how to for submitting for taxes, etc. So I feel like I've been lucky in that instance. But it's a great point. People don't always talk about it until it's like somebody's already done something that you can judge. But I think it would be definitely great to be a little bit more proactive.
Does the ATP provide any services or help in that regard? I mean, I think
one of the things when you get to I think it's around top 250, you have like I can't recall what the name is. It's some sort of education week or something that's designed to help players. So this was, when I did that, I mean, geez, that was 15 years ago. I'm not sure what the current sort of curriculum in terms of that is, but I remember, we did go over some basics, and I think that's actually really good. I don't remember exactly how much we spoke about financial stuff, but I do know that the tours sort of embrace that more. So there are options for players to reach out. Sometimes it's players reach out when they find themselves in trouble. So but no, ATP does do a good job with that. There was we went to Disney World for 4 or 5 days, which was kind of fun at the time. And I mean, I remember them going over some of like the basics of the tour, the structure, and things of that nature.
Um, are you the current president of the ATP Player Council?
Yeah, so
Okay.
kind of like I feel like I've assumed that responsibility.
Okay.
In the last term, Djokovic was president, then he left. I did become president, and in the new one, we haven't really gotten around to an official voting. We found that
Okay.
everybody was, contributing, and I guess people just looked at me just because I've been on the council for so long that
Okay.
technically no, but I feel like I feel like I definitely have like a leadership role. I did talk to the council, now that I'm retired. Obviously, I'm cognizant. I'm not gonna, I'm not on the on the pulse, but I think just with a lot of things going on, there's still value I can bring in terms of looking at some of these issues we're having with some of the Grand Slams,
Mm-hmm.
strategic plan that management wants to put in, but I certainly won't be running again when my term's up. But I think as if I can help in whatever capacity throughout the year, I'm very passionate about that.
Educate me on what the ATP Player Council is.
Yeah,
You said some issues with the Grand Slams. I don't even, what does that mean?
yeah. So you know the basic structure of the tour is you have management, and then you have the board, which is represented by three people representing the tournaments, people representing the players, and it's such an interesting environment because I think traditionally, not that I've had experience, your board members are all collectively, you know, trying to maximize the service. And within tennis, even though they're on the board, those two parties have often very conflicting,
Yeah.
interests at heart. Um, so then underneath the three player board reps, you've got 10 council members who are elected by fellow players, and they're sort of the voice of the players, and they communicate with both management and their player board reps, sort of the go-between players' wishes. And that's something that I've done since 2012. I think I'm the longest serving person on the council. I've just always found it interesting.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of time. It's sometimes frustrating at times. I feel like it's the most underappreciated job in tennis because a lot of players don't even know
Yeah.
who who's on the council. But it's that's a basic premise, and yeah, it's had its challenges. As you've seen the emergence of the PTPA, that I think comes from frustration of the system and the players' power and voice within the structure. There's obviously a lot of conflicting thoughts about that, but that's kind of at the end of the day, it's just to give the players a voice.
So if the players don't like the balls, the host hotel is bad, transportation, is it that type of stuff, or is it like pay us more, or why are the locker rooms suck? Is it all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything from literally everything that you can think of. So practice courts,
Okay.
quality of lights, when playing under nights, prize money levels, pension. Those are like, scheduling, commitments. These are some of the higher, not more important items, but ones that have sort of the bigger effect. Prize money distributions, round by round, you've seen a big push between earlier rounds and qualifying have a higher distribution of prize money. That was, a big push from the council and just sort of, the whole agenda. So, so those are some of the items, but then also, I mean, entry requirements for doubles. We have to approve a tournament director change. And then the last one, which is probably our biggest responsibility, is we vote in the player board rep. So, that happens every 2 or 3 years. And that is one of our primary responsibilities. But you can see it's pretty, it really encompasses, a lot of different aspects.
I mean, not to mention, you're also trying to win your match.
Yeah. And
the next day, like that always blows my mind that you have to do meetings and stuff.
We've had long meetings. I remember at Wimbledon meetings, like a couple of days before the tournament starts, we're in this room at like 10:30 at night. And, I don't think it's ever, affected my tennis. Obviously that was my priority, but I feel like it was something that it's really been interesting, especially now that I'm talking about it more than I usually do with you. I can definitely reflect on a lot of different phases that, the tour has been through.
You're someone who has played, you've lost some first rounds and you've made it to the finals of the ultimate. How do you feel about the new distribution of more money going to the early round. I mean, you're one of the few you're one of the few players who's kind of had a foot in both areas of big money and also, not to be insulting, small money. I mean, you're talking about me who's won $11,000 over 4 years playing tennis. So,
Um, I've been a huge supporter of changing the distribution of prize money, and I'm all for, tennis is a sport that rewards success. So I think it's really important to keep that aspect. But going the amount of effort it takes to make, let's say, semifinals of a Grand Slam, and then you see that the winner is taking home, I think, like 4 times that. It just doesn't seem like it's 4 times. It shouldn't be that
yeah,
big of a difference. I feel like I often like look at some of the golf distributions. I always thought that was like a
right,
better approach. I think we had to fight for it as players because a lot of these tournaments wanted to present the big check at the end of the
right,
by the
right.
by the by the sponsor, and that's kind of where so much money was pushed towards those rounds. And I think it really took a lot of effort from the players to tell the slams, and I think it was from the tour itself that I really think it's that distribution should be fairer across the sport. And I think one of the goals is to make tennis as feasible a living for as many players as possible. And I think you've seen that. I mean, we've still got a ways to go, but if you look at career prize money or earnings year by year, I mean, guys ranked 150, 200. I mean, it's quite a big difference. What I remember my first sort of big check was first round of Australian Open in 2008.
Yeah,
And that is now less than what you get for losing first round of qualifying, which I think is great.
that's
And I think it's
awesome.
important just to note on that, because I've been there before. Like, no, just because you lose first round of a Grand Slam or qualifying, you should still be entitled to prize money because you've spent a lot of hard work and time to, getting there. It's not like I know that sort of there's been some criticism. Well, like, how can you get $100,000 for losing first round of a Grand Slam? Well, I mean, yeah.
I as a fan, I just thought that was such a no brainer, and it's too bad that kind of COVID is what it took to make that happen. But it's like people do not realize how excellent at tennis so many of these players are. Not even the ones you're seeing on TV or in the Grand Slam. I mean, you've played 600 tour level matches. That's why you get to say you're retired. Someone like me has to say they quit. That's a lot of matches. Is there one that you hold dear? And it doesn't have to be the semi that took you to the final. Is there one that you just feel like you overachieved or dug the deepest? So many matches. I'm just curious if one sticks out, and also if one sticks out that was hurtful or a loss that was particularly tough.
Oh man, Mike, I think that's,
I mean, 600's a lot, Kevin.
yeah, I mean, fortunately, I've got some to choose from. I'm gonna say, fortunately, I've got some to choose from, and some that I would, to the second part of the question, that hurt a lot. But in hindsight, you realize it's really part of the process.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, look, my match against John in the semifinals of Wimbledon.
yeah.
I mean, just the sort of just what I went through, and up until that match, I mean, beating Federer in 5 sets. I think it was 13-11 in the fifth at a 4-hour match against Monfils just a couple of days before that.
Yeah. People forget. People forget that Monfils match. People. I mean, Federer, you're down 2 sets to love. People forget that stuff.
Even the first, earlier rounds, Cole Schreiber, Seppi. I mean, both those
Mm-hmm.
guys have had really good results on the grass before. So I ended up playing the most games in Wimbledon history. That is a stat that I have to my name, which I don't know if will get broken. Who knows?
Who knows?
I think just that moment afterwards was a really a moment I definitely won't forget, and just for so many reasons. Just in that moment itself, I mean, we've been on court for 6 hours, more than 6 hours, and getting through that, then going through to the finals of Wimbledon, and at the same time, these conflicting feelings of my opponent, who I've known for over a decade, and
Yeah.
it was such a conflict between feeling really happy myself, but I certainly didn't feel sad for John, but I felt, I think, compassion. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
we was on court for over 6 hours.
Yeah.
and it was literally at that point in time a sort of a shootout of who's going to win 2 games, and those 2 games determined a semifinals or a finals Wimbledon, which is definitely a big difference. So, I mean, that moment,
Yeah.
those championships would definitely stand out. I could honestly, I could go through a lot more, but
Yeah.
I think that would definitely be one that sticks out.
I was curious in learning that in NCAA's, maybe it was the individual. Did you lose to John Isner?
I did, yeah. So
Okay.
when we made finals of NCAAs in Athens in '07, we played Georgia in the finals. It was a tough crowd
Oh man.
playing down there, but John definitely handed it to me that day. It wasn't a pretty match. He played well, but yeah. So that was our matches go all the way back into our college
Right.
years.
And that's so cool too. That's such a awesome statement for college tennis. Here you are watching Georgia play Illinois. The number one singles players are playing each other. John, big advantage being at home, and also 10 years later, you'll be playing. Is it 10 years? 11 years later, you'll be playing the second longest tennis match in history at Wimbledon. So that's very cool. Let's talk about.
Not to interrupt, just because it was coming to my mind from your previous question, is it's just so interesting, as things change throughout your career, your expectations change. But I remember the first time I qualified for a Grand Slam was in Australia, 2008. One of my really good friends and future coach, GD Jones, was out there, and I remember after the match embracing him. And I mean, I couldn't have been any happier as a tennis player.
Right.
Whether it was not that same feeling, whether it's at Wimbledon or US Open, I mean, it meant so much to me. And then only a couple of days later, I served for the match, first round of that Australian Open, and ended up losing it.
Right.
And that was, a really, really tough match. But just thinking back about it, that was one of the earliest memories. And, there's so much, I just realized how much sort of emotion and passion goes into sort of each and every single match. So
Yeah.
each one is kind of profound in its own way.
Yeah. Well, also, that doesn't surprise me that's as you're talking, that's a match that comes to mind. That's almost like, in comedy, you remember these moments when you kind of broke through to a new level, and those are these huge moments. It's like, oh yeah, then there's also this, and this thing happened, and that led to this. But it's almost like, holy shit, I just qualified for a Grand Slam. Oh my God. That makes sense to me. And that's so cool that GD was there with you. I didn't even realize that. Yeah. So let's talk about the serve very quickly. I feel like whenever I go to any court around the world, I always like to pop in, watch people play tennis. It feels like everyone's serve is terrible, and their grip is wrong. The toss is all over the place, and yet it's such the most important shot. What's your philosophy on serving? What can you tell me and my listeners to help their serve? You watch the best servers, it just feels fluid and simple. You understand the question? It's pretty dumb,
Of course.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's a really good question, because over the years, I've spent time with kids, adults who are learning to play the sport, and I see the serve, and you're right, it's not a good motion, but I almost appreciate how difficult it is sort of to teach, because it's, for some reason, I mean, I guess people who like throw a lot, like maybe a practice or something, like it would be easier. But for a lot of people who haven't thrown, it's like, I mean, it's me throwing left-handed or serving left-handed. It's not pretty. It's the open face at the back, and
it's like that shot against Isner and Wimbledon when you fell down.
But that was much better, because my forehand, I used to practice a little bit.
I mean, I'm not saying it was pretty, but it got the ball back. Yeah.
It was pretty effective, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, on the serve, like from my side, I don't remember. I just remember hitting a lot of serves as a kid. I mean, people ask me, about the serves. I'm tall. It helps a lot, but I can guarantee you I've hit as many serves as anybody on this planet who are even shorter than myself.
Yeah.
So most people. So it's a combination of both in terms of my, how I got there. I remember being really frustrated a lot of times. It was difficult, getting the ball toss in the right area, thinking that I had it, and then not getting it, and eventually
Right.
it kind of I mean, it happens. So unfortunately, that doesn't really provide much encouragement to into your listeners, other than to say that if I find it, I'll definitely like maybe put something out there, because I
Yeah.
feel like this is a great trick. I mean, there's a lot of drills. One of the easiest ones I just say is like just throw a ball. Like, so throw a tennis ball, then even throw. I remember going onto a field, and but I used to give us old tennis rackets to throw, because it really is a throwing motion. So
And you don't mean practice the toss. You mean, ladies and gentlemen, throw.
yeah, but
Throw a rock
in
in
a safe environment. Yeah,
yeah.
feel we would like
throw a rock into the lake. Throw a tennis ball. Just throw.
And then added to that, I will say, make sure your toss is in a really good position, because I see often it's already difficult enough, and then the toss is all over the place, and now you're adjusting to the toss. So
Yeah.
if I had one advice, is just get the toss in the same position first, and then you can focus on other things, because then you're not having to, not that you're going to get the toss perfectly, but you need it in
Yeah.
like a in a bit of an area. We used to put like a bucket on the ground, so you would throw it up and the ball would have to land like in a certain spot. I mean, that would be probably the most practical piece of advice I could give.
I think that's unbelievable advice, because I think the average player would it would be left of the bucket, way past the bucket, behind. Yeah. So, when I was rewatching some of your Isner match, just the simplicity and the fluidity of the serving, and it's like, how can they play this long at this level? Well, it's like there's not a lot of wasted movement on any of these serves.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I almost think of I swam a lot growing up, and for whatever reason, my freestyle is just terrible, and I swim like 2 or 3 lengths, and my shoulders are, maybe it's because I'm tired from tennis or whatever it might be, but it's the same.
Right.
Now it's been tough in the last few years, just with a few injuries, but especially let's say in 2018, I mean, as I demonstrated, I could serve for a long time.
6 hours and 23 minutes. Yeah.
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 And that part of it is, that's when the efficiency of movement definitely makes a big difference.
This is really fun talking to you. Thank you for talking. And before it airs, I do a little intro about you, on my own. So I'm not like rattling off your resume to you, but just so you know. Serve, return. I remember when I came down there to help you with your charity event. I wanted to come watch you practice. I also wanted to hit some balls with some like 14-year-old kid who beat me 2-2 that you set up. But I remember there was a lot of time in that practice. It's just one practice in 30 years of tennis, but there's a lot of returns hit.
Yeah.
Is that standard?
Yeah. No, so it's been tough. I feel like I've had a tricky relationship on my return of serve throughout my career. And I feel like if you looked at the paper and the stats, it will show you that I'm not going to go down as one of the best returners of all time. In fact, I'm going to go down as one of the poor returners of all time. If you look at, points won, whatever the metrics are. But in my mind, and I think I'm, right in saying this, I've had a lot of people tell me, like, I feel like I was a really good returner at the same time.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of times in matches where I put a lot of expectations, and then I had disappointment when I wasn't making returns, and it actually affected my service games as well. So I think it was like halfway through my career, I really needed to separate those two, because I had this, I think in some ways it would have been better if I had zero expectation on the return and being like, whatever happens, happens. I think it would have actually freed me up. And I think I might have actually had better return stats without my actual return being better, just more my mental approach from it. But I think because I believed in my return, but at times I didn't have that success, it really made me frustrated. And I think it actually made it more difficult for me to return. But
interesting. I did not think I was asking a loaded, difficult question there, but as soon as I asked that, I saw your face turn. This is something you've opined over.
Yeah.
This is something you've spent a lot of time on.
Mike, as you'll realize, most questions that go through my mind aren't necessarily, I don't know, a simple answer isn't really put on. one of my kryptonites for tennis as well. But so I mean, it's something that we worked on a lot. I mean, I felt, look, if I could return and break 2 or 3 times more often, I mean, just statistically, I think it would be a big difference. But yeah, so I mean, that's why we spent a lot of time returning. I think I drove my coaches crazy sometimes, wanting to keep on that front as much as I did. But that's just the way I saw it at the moment.
And I would challenge anyone who's listening to this who plays tennis to ask yourself, when was the last time you worked on your return?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something the pros do a lot of.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the biggest differences going from college to pros. I mean, the return is a huge difference, and you'll also see it from juniors to pros. It's it's definitely a big part of the game.
How did University of Illinois come about? I mean, that I've always been I'm a fan of your tennis no matter where you went to college, but it just so happens we went to the same college. How did that happen? South African tennis player? It's nuts.
Yeah, so my second year of juniors, my second year of under 18s, I had no intention of going to college. I didn't even know anything about it. And I remember I think it was like February of 2004, I got a call from the coach at University of Las Vegas, and we chatted for 45 minutes, and I'm like, I didn't know any of this even existed. Like, it was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I sat down with my parents, and we kind of realized that one of the challenges from South Africa, well, we knew this, but after my junior year was, I was going to turn professional. It was, where was I going to live and train, the expenses of everything. It was really going to be difficult coming out of South Africa. And as the year went on, I had more and more coaches, contacting me. I ended up having quite a few, maybe around 20 or so. And it really seemed like this was a great option for me to explore this path. In 2000, as you know, in 2003, Illinois won the NCAAs. In 2004, they were still ranked number one. They won one of the longest winning streaks ever. They were ranked one in the country. And the head coach, Craig Tiley, was South African as well. So those three bits of information, without really knowing too much else, was my preference was always to go to Illinois. If I looked at the schools, I'm not going to name any names because I'm going to be politically correct here, but I took a couple unofficial visits, and they're great schools, very, very good schools in terms of like tennis schools. From some of the other ones that I was recruited on, not knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have gone on recruits to those two, teams. Those two universities specifically, but I think it's something to do with Craig. I think it was like maybe a ploy of because he almost because he was helping me through the process. I think also being South African, I think at least I was, he was helping me through this. And, in hindsight, I'm like, it was interesting two unofficials that he advised me to take.
He's pretty smart.
Yeah.
He's pretty smart. I remember
it's also funny. I remember, one of the recruiting points was how big the football stadium was. And in the beginning, it was really impressive. And then, a few months down the line, when Tennessee called me and it's like, we've got a 90,000 foot stadium, I'm like, it didn't really. And I'll tell you why. So one of the unofficial trips I took was to University of Alabama, which is not necessarily known as a tennis powerhouse. Great school. And when we're out on the trip, the coach took me and my mom onto the football field and had Sweet Home Alabama playing, and he probably looked at us like, I mean, isn't this really cool? And mom and I didn't even know what football really was. It was like, hey, this is a nice song. So in hindsight, though, I think it was kind of cool walking out, onto that football field.
Yeah, but does it have anything to do with the personal attention you're going to get as a tennis player?
I know, but it's, what the recruiting process was like, was, part of the whole package. I don't think they realized how focused and dedicated I was. And the only thing that really mattered to me what was going to happen on the, on the tennis court. So I guess that's why I ended up at Illinois.
Yeah. I remember.
And sorry, Mike. And then just to, just so what it meant for me was, once I decided to go through that, and that's why I've been a big advocate of college tennis, especially not for every player, but I think for a lot of players. And you have to do your homework, you have to get into a right program. But as you know, I mean, Illinois is unbelievable tennis community. A whole bunch of pros have gone through, a whole bunch of players have gone through the program, have turned professional. You get to play, given how strong our team was, we played the best teams throughout the country in the spring. In the summer, you get to play pro events. I went out to California, I played like 8 or 9 events. And then in the fall, I actually played a few pro events as well. And that's testament to, Brad and the coach and sort of the environment that, he allowed me to play pro events instead of, collegiate tournaments, because that was definitely better for my for my past. So that's why, I just, I had a great experience at Illinois. Besides the fact from tennis, just from a personal standpoint, I met my wife, like my whole
Yeah.
core of friends are, come from Illinois. So, yeah, I mean, I really can't talk fondly enough about my whole experience.
When Kevin says Brad, he means the head coach of Illinois, Brad Dancer, who was the assistant probably when you went to Illinois. Is that right? Okay. And
Illinois
also,
freshman year, and then
okay.
yeah.
And also, I think it's worth noting when you go to Illinois, and this happens at any college, but unlimited court time, baskets of balls, rackets. I mean, these resources are expensive and difficult to organize. It's not even just the money sometimes. It's just people to practice with.
Exactly.
College environment gives you all that.
Yeah, I mean, and I was very self-motivated coming, and I needed that. I think we can admit that you can lose your way in the college environment. There are a lot of distractions. I mean,
no, I'm pointing at myself, but I was never at this level. But yeah, of course.
No, there's a social scene. I mean,
Yep.
For me, it was the first time I've sort of been by myself. But I laugh. I remember my freshman year. We play a lot of dual matches on a Friday night, Saturday night, and our matches used to be recorded on good old VHS tapes. And I remember it's Friday night, Saturday night. Most of my team had gone out. I was sitting in my dorm room rewatching the highlights of
right.
my on my match. I did change. I got injured for a while, and I think it was good. I was very sheltered as a kid, so I think it was a good I remember you actually coming to alumni weekend.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I felt pretty uncomfortable at the time because I feel like you in a well-meaning way, but you're able to pick out people who maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable in social settings. I remember we were at the apartment on Evans Eder and Culkin's apartment. I don't know where it was back then, but yeah, I mean, I was a very sort of shy kid in the beginning, but I feel like that part of the college experience actually helped me develop as a person.
If I was picking on you, it came from my own insecurities, as I've learned over many years. Let's get back to pros real quick, and then I'm gonna let you go. This has been awesome to chat with you. Hold on, I just lost my train of thought. So,
we're in no rush. So
okay, good. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, that's what I was going to say. You were talking about reviewing your match on a Friday night. I mean, I hope people are pulling information from this. Most of the team was out drinking. It's not to say that these aren't great players that were also choosing to have fun one night, but you were reviewing your match. You went on to win 7 titles in the ATP, 2 Grand Slam finals. I was curious to learn that your kind of breakthrough title was in South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, so I played. We had the South African Open for 3 years: 2009, 10, and 11. I played in 2009. It wasn't a good experience for me. I feel like I don't know if it was just playing at home, but it didn't go very well. And then I actually didn't play the tournament in 2010. I think coming from Australia to go back home, scheduling it wise, it wasn't amazing.
Yep.
But in 2011. I went back. At this point, I improved a lot those couple years prior to that, and the venue was 20 minutes from where I grew up. My family and friends were out watching, and I played another collegiate player, Samdev Devarman, who I know very well. I played him in the finals. I lost the first set. I remember there was a bit of a rain delay. My coach at the time.
I mean, you had lost to him. You'd lost to him in the NCAA's as well.
I lost him in the NCAAs, correct.
Yeah.
That was a couple of years prior to that. I had played him. I think one of my first Grand Slam wins was at US Open, and I played Sunday. So
okay,
that was maybe a year or two before. But anyway, I mean, in the finals, I'm down a set, and my coach Louis at the time, he got into me. He was like, I wasn't playing the tennis that I needed to be playing. I was a little bit more, too passive. So the rain delay helped me on that, but then I came back, and one of your questions earlier, I mean, that was a great memory for me. I mean, I remember the specific moment of winning the match, of that delight, and to do so in South Africa, like not far from home, I think was definitely a special moment for me.
I feel like athletes in every sport usually play terrible at their hometown.
Hmm.
I feel like it happens with football. Oh, this is his hometown. And the guy drops 5 balls. I'm now learning more about Formula One. These drivers will race in their hometown and they always crash. What is that?
I think it's just, it's expectation. Really, I feel like if I go back to even my, college days, obviously tennis is an individual sport. Growing up, I didn't really play, for my country a whole
Yeah.
lot. I played Davis Cup, but this was after my, college experience. So college was really the first time I was playing, not just for myself, but for the team. And yeah, I feel like I struggle with that a little bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
I felt that expectation of and letting other people down. And I think if you expand that to playing in a home city,
Mm-hmm.
it can be challenging. On the flip side, you see remarkable stories where the exact opposite happens of,
Yeah.
accomplishments that I think would only necessarily take place because of, the crowd support. So
Yeah.
I've
It's
had a little
it's
bit of both. I remember
yeah.
like this year in Delray Beach, like, that's where I've been living for 10 years. A lot of people were wanting to come and watch me playing, and I played a terrible match. And this is something that
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the feeling. I know that feel. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, I would think like, say like, man, surely he's experienced enough for that. But, when you have a little bit of doubt and then there's, added pressure of, and it's just the
Yeah.
way your mind perceives the situation. I feel like that's probably what, contributes to that.
It's so ridiculous, this whole idea of letting people down. It's like you're not doing this for them. You don't even know these people, or some of them maybe just because it's your mom's brother's friend. In comedy, when you bomb and you have friends who come and you bomb, it's like you almost want to grab them and go, it's not usually like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's also like, why do I give a shit about these people? Let's talk about comedy. You like comedy. Whenever I see you, you always ask me some question about a Daily Show piece, or do you like this guy? Do you like this guy? Is that on your phone? Are you watching this between match? What's Kevin Anderson in the relationship to comedy?
No, I'm a fan. It's, there's nothing like, spending a little bit of time and, listening to people like yourself, try and entertain a group of people. And, I think actually just knowing you as well, I've a big appreciation of, of what's involved. I think in some ways you would think like the barrier to entry is not as high. After all, I can also grab a microphone and go
Yeah.
out there, but
Yeah.
you kind of realize quickly of, just it's not easy. Otherwise, it would be, a million,
Right.
super successful comedians. But I just, I've always been a fan of, humor, watching shows growing up, and then stand up wasn't necessarily a big
Mm-hmm.
part of my life. I've never done it, and I wouldn't dream of doing it. But I think just coming into college, and I think the stand up scene and history in the States, there's a lot of history with that. Just the other day, I was introduced to Don Rickles.
Yeah. Don Rickles, one of the classics.
And I was like, I started this. I'm like, for 3 weeks, I was down the
I know.
wormhole. I'm like, this guy's unbelievable. But
He would insult his audience for 98%. Really mean. And then the last 2% he would sing a song and go, "Oh, I love you guys." And everyone would go, "What a great guy."
yeah, so no, I'm a big fan. I'm a huge Ricky Gervais fan. I've watched
Yeah.
a ton of his stand up,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's been so nice, obviously seeing your own career. I've watched a lot of your stuff from the Sports Costa basement, which I don't know how many viewers know about that, but
Yeah, true.
it's it's yeah, it's
Cool.
I think also I appreciate it because I know how difficult it is, and it's
Yeah.
not just the joke itself, it's the delivery. It's
Yeah.
people have to connect with you, and like you could tell a joke, I could tell the exact same joke, and one would be really funny and one would be like, this guy's the worst in the world. So yeah, it's just something I think just with tennis, and you're passing the time, it's just
Yeah.
something I've always been interested in.
Was comedy or TV on in your household? Was that something your parent? No. Okay.
No, not really. My first recollection of comedy would be, from South Africa. We have, a big British comedy influence. So,
Yeah.
the two biggest ones was Faulty Towers with John Cleese and
Sure.
Mr. Bean with with Rowan Atkinson, and
Yeah.
this was more of their popular stuff. I mean, Faulty Towers was, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily that big in the States, but
No. No.
I mean, that was just
Excellent.
watching that today is just, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
And Rowan Atkinson's character, portrayal of Mr. Bean, obviously it's quite, slapstick and, silly, but I've seen since then a bunch of his stuff that he's done. I mean, two, brilliant,
Yeah.
comedians. And yeah, I mean, I guess not. You know what? This is actually fun. I've never been asked this question before.
I know.
Nobody's ever asked me about comedy before. So I appreciate you asking.
Well, I guess that's why I'm here. And I think Americans don't understand that other countries don't have as developed a stand-up world. Now, I would say Great Britain has more. This idea of a one man or woman standing, saying something both satirical, comedic, controversial. So in SA, I mean, I know Trevor Noah, obviously, stand-up comic, my boss. But, is stand-up pretty prevalent in South Africa?
I don't remember stand-up. I remember, I mean, and, obviously Trevor would know him. A guy called Leon Schuster. He was a big, like a practical joke guy. He put himself in some really interesting scenarios. Within South Africa, he was, good, like taking on characters and just, he was to film the show. And I remember, like, in terms of South African, that was like probably the one that really sticks to mind. This wasn't a stand-up, like, you're in front of a crowd. And the first time I ever went to, a stand-up show was, well into my 20s. So
okay.
But I think you're right. I think Australia, there's a few stand-up comedians there. I mean, it's grown. Obviously, Trevor's been a huge success, and I'm sure if you go back now, there's it's a much more developed sort of area that people get into. But I think coming to the States, I mean, at least when I was in 2005, I was definitely introduced to that pretty quickly.
7 titles you've won as a player. Could you name them all?
Yeah, I mean, so I was.
Should we try it now?
Yeah, so Johannesburg. I was going to go the years, but I mean, I'll just go through
whatever.
Go through the time.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, so Johannesburg. Then it was Delray Beach in 2012. Winston-Salem 2015.
We're at 3, ladies and gentlemen.
Is that 4 or 3?
That's 3. Johannesburg, Delray, Winston-Salem. I'm not going to have you name all 600 matches you've played at this rate.
So then the next one I won was New York, maybe.
Okay. Indoor? Was that the indoor?
That was indoor.
Yeah, hard.
Yeah. Vienna that same year.
Okay. What was Vienna? Indoor?
Yeah, indoor.
Okay. We're at 5.
I won Pune in 2019. That was right before my injuries from Australian Open.
Okay.
My last tournament, which is a very memorable one for me, my wife and daughter were there, was Newport last year.
I know. That's such a wonderful picture of you and your wife and your daughter holding the trophy.
Side note on that is it's tough to say. I mean, but I had a losing record in finals. I made a lot of finals before winning a few. I think a little bit of that was some of the growth that I needed to do in terms of my self-belief, and getting through it. It's it's a tough sport of clinching through, but I made a whole handful of finals before I was able to like start winning multiple events.
It's always important to be reminded of that, both from someone else's trials and tribulations and our own, that it's like keep knocking on the door. It doesn't just happen all the time immediately.
Exactly.
Last 2 questions. Is there something about the sport that you don't like? Whether it be the pressure on juniors to perform well, the process, the amount of tournaments, anything, the racket. Is there something you don't like?
I mean, I think it's a really difficult sport. And I can't talk for other sports. I mean, I just know, tennis, and in terms of the amount of who's been successful or not, it really seems that a lot of time and effort needs to be put in at a very young age.
Yeah.
And I think that can be very difficult. If I looked at some of the American sports, like, football, it doesn't happen all the time, but, you hear stories of an athlete might have played collegiate basketball and then went to professional football. I mean, it would be impossible for that to happen in tennis. If you're not, you could maybe find a couple outliers who only started playing tennis seriously when they were 12 or 13 years old. I mean, 99% of players, by the time they 7 or 10 years old, they're playing 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that can be really, difficult, on young players. It's a lot of players, it's especially on the women's side. I feel like, tennis has led the way in terms of financial, opportunities within the sport. You see a lot of, tough environments, family environments where, the parents are really tough on their kids. And this would happen both on, the men's tour and, and the women's tour. So I feel like that part is difficult. It just, and just like the individual aspect, like, having a daughter now, look, I think tennis, taught me some, invaluable lessons throughout my life. I mean, the challenges, but playing college tennis, just being part of that sort of team environment, I feel like it's, it's something as tennis players we do miss out on. I think that's pretty, exciting, that sort of collective, effort to, achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, the tour, I think there's, I didn't like, with tennis, you have to be basically top 100 to make a living. I mean,
right.
The depth is really strong. And given the popularity of, of tennis, I mean, I get it. Like, if you were ranked 75 in the world in swimming or, something, they would say, well, or, sprinting. But the reality is, and a lot of these studies I see, tennis is one of the most popular sports in the world. So it's a huge platform. There's a lot of people who are playing. So those are, I mean, a few of the.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good insight.
I could probably name a few more, but as much as I don't like that about tennis, I mean, I guess it's just part of the process.
Yeah. No, everyone has a different answer that interests me. What, last question, Kevin Anderson, we will speak again. This isn't like, just because you're retiring, everyone says good. You're not dead. What do you love about the sport? I know you're retiring, so in a way you're saying goodbye to it, but is there something that would bring you back to the practice court over and over again?
For me, if I really have to look, I could say I got to travel the world. I got to earn a living doing, what I love doing. I got to meet amazing people along the way.
Yeah.
Played on TV and, big stadiums. Like, as great as those were, if I really do simplify, what I loved most about it was just such an opportunity for me to challenge myself, and find the process of how can I get better? How can I keep, improving? And because it's an individual sport, and the way it's set up, you could kind of see the results of your hard work. I mean, if you were not suddenly beating somebody who you weren't beating, or making, winning tournaments or winning matches that you weren't before, you could see your level of progress. And just from a very young age, I feel like what I loved most about the sport was it was the ideal testing ground for me. It was like the ideal way for me to push myself, push through all these different challenges. Tennis was the vehicle, if you will, of what I was able to do it with, and it turned out to be a great vehicle for me.
Well, this test is over. The test of Tennis Anyone podcast with Michael Kosta, but also your playing test is over. And doesn't mean you can't come back, and some players do, but it's been an unbelievable career, and congratulations, and you deserve to take a deep breath. What's next? Is it you keep working with your charitable foundations, if you'd like to mention them? What are you planning on?
Yeah, so a few people have asked me in the last few years of what I want to get into, and sometimes I think players maybe spend a little bit of time setting some things up so the transition period's a little bit easier. I was always all in on tennis. So as a result, when I retired, a few weeks ago, I really had a blank slate. And I think I realized that because I'm fortunate enough that I've spent my whole life doing something I'm really passionate about, and I've been successful enough where I've got a bit of runway now. I can sort of take my time and
Yeah.
finding that next passion. I mean, just two that I will mention, which I'm really interested about. I mentioned First Serve, the helping. It's basically an after schools program helping kids in underserved communities, and I've really stepped up. At least the amount of time and effort. I've always wanted to do that, but now I've obviously my schedule's been freed up a lot, and
Yeah.
so in terms of however I can get involved with that, is something I'm definitely interested in. And
Cool.
another one, I mean, and this is something maybe a topic for a further chat down the line, is just the whole topic of mental health. I
Yeah.
think it's something that's been neglect. I think it's changing. There's still this huge stigma between mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
I've had my own challenges that I've had to deal with. I've been incredibly private about that.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of in the process of seeing how I can get involved with that as well. It would,
Okay.
I think, be a big passion of mine, and something that. So those are just two areas that I don't necessarily know. I'm not interested in cashing checks in that. So I mean, I will need something to help pay
Yeah.
the bills.
Yeah.
I mean, I think given what I've been able to achieve in tennis, I mean, hopefully there'll be opportunities within that. But my primary motivating factors now is really just to relax, enjoy, time with my family, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
at least these couple endeavors I've mentioned, I'm pretty excited about them.
That's awesome. And it's interesting how much mental health has come forward during this time of COVID, where both athletes and regular people like myself, everyone is struggling in some capacity, it feels like. So that's interesting to watch.
It is, and I mean, I know I'm self-extending my own interview here, but I keep going back to it. It's the the simple analogy of if, like I mentioned, multiple times today, I had 2 knee surgeries. I had every injury in the book, and I speak about it freely and openly. But if I started talking about some of the mental challenges, my guard immediately goes up, and I just shouldn't really shouldn't be that way. And I think it's a bit of a generational thing. Sort of the pick, just sort of it's pick it up, pick yourself up by the bootstraps kind of thing, which is not a bad thing, but it's I think it's a little bit of a outdated way of looking at things. So that's just kind of something that I think it's a great discussion to be having.
Kevin, thank you. Why don't you go spend some of that 17 million, man?
Okay.
Hey, thank you very much. And
it's all saved up. It's all liquid right now. It's all in bonds.
Yeah, that's probably very smart. It's probably very smart. I would, yeah, exactly. Say hi to Kelsey, please. And
Thanks,
here,
Mike,
I'll
appreciate it.